a choice right now, between fear and love. It's just a rock.
Out of the dark night of ignorance and into the shining light of truth.
Expounding reality.
A population of citizens capable of critical thinking.
We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are.
There's a level of reality where everything dissolves into an ocean of energy.
We empower our experience by insisting on our authenticity.
That's very profound. Very.
Welcome to Expanding Reality. I am your host, Brandon Thomas. On this incredibly cool episode, Dawn Lester joins me in studio, and we bring in Polymath Jenny as well as Christian Yordanov to have one of the coolest conversations ever. Also, make sure that you check the links down there in the show description to support your favorite show, number one. But number two, you get access to the Afterthought, as well as all the hangouts and extra content and stuff. But in this Afterthought, guys, we really go for it. We share a whiteboard and all have a bit of a draw, and it's fucking fun, man, honestly. So check that out. Link down in the show description. Again, a wonderful way to support your favorite show, as well as you get access to some pretty dope shit, to be honest with you. So all the ways to find all of the wonderful folks, as well as my in-studio guests, will be located down in the show description. But without any further ado, let's get to this incredibly cool conversation with Dawn Lester, Polymath Jenny, and that's right, Christian Yordanov. Welcoming to the show, everybody. We have Dawn Lester in studio. We have Polymath Jenny joining us, as well as Christian Yordanov. And we, because Dawn's in town, we were going to do something anyway. These two amazing souls here just happen to be in Sphere of Mind. So there's a reason that this conversation is happening right now with this combination of folk. But I can say I'm very excited and absolutely here for it. And who else is here for it physically is Dawn Lester. Dawn, if you don't mind, for the audience here, everybody's going to be linked down below, but if you don't mind for the audience's sake here, just remind them of who you are. You were on recently, and that was a blast. We'll link that episode down there, too. And then how you got to be sitting right here next to your boy.
Oh, okay. I'll keep it brief. I co-authored What Really Makes You Ill, Why Everything You Thought You Knew About Disease Is Wrong. Took a few years of study, but it came out at just the right time, just before the nonsense that started in 2020. So definitely some divine timing there, getting it ready to be able to present to people so those with an open mind would be willing to look at how the so-called health system actually works. And it doesn't work. It's not a health system, it's a sick care system. I think loads of people know that. It's just that it goes into a great deal of detail of not just the kind of diseases and healthcare system, but the background, the history, the broader picture, the vested interests, the agendas behind it all. So it gives people a really good overview of it all, so they can really get a handle on why everything is the way it is and how they managed to get away with the nonsense that started in 2020. So also another book that I co-authored is about the nature of reality, which was published in 2010. So I'm kind of combining both understanding reality, what this is about, or learning. I'm still learning and exploring what this is, how it works, what we can do, what we can't do, how all of that. And so the health thing kind of runs into it because we're being manipulated by this nonsense that they're still trying to run out. So that kind of leads into why I'm here, because the core reason was to attend an event called Music and Sky in Northern California. It was just amazing. And I was actually this time one of the speakers, which was fantastic. It's run by three guys, one of them Mike Winner, who I've known for a while. He's part of Alpha Vedic, who I was connected with I think maybe 2021. Had a couple of interviews again about the work and what we're doing about the book, and they helped kind of get that out in there. So I was a speaker there, and instead of just coming across to the States, because as you can tell from my accent, I live in England.
What?
I'm from there. Well, I'm from there, but I still live there at the moment.
Fair enough.
So so instead of just coming across for 4 days, I thought, well, let's make it a trip. So I connected with a few people, sort of one part a friend on the way. So then I was in California for a while, and then I spent a few days in Texas at Sovereignty Ranch with my friend Molly Engelhardt, spending some time with her, seeing what she's doing on the farm. And again, there's really interesting stuff there. I mean, if we want to go into that. And because that's not too far away, I connected with Brandon, and he said, well, as you're here, let's meet up. So here I am.
It's so cool. So what that entailed is driving down to Bandera, Texas, which is about almost 4.5 hours away from us, a little less 4.5. So drove down there, an amazing road trip. It was a beautiful drive. We haven't gone that far west, my wife and I, that south and that west, that way. And so we show up to this amazing place. Molly insisted on showing me around, and we were out there petting cows. We're looking at emus and pigs and all kinds of, it was amazing. They have like 200 acres out there, this regenerative farm.
Yeah.
And it's unbelievable what they're doing. And so it was an honor to get to hang out with Molly, and she will be on soon, guys, to check this out. And Christian, you'd love to chat with her, dude. So they're doing this really, really cool stuff. The stories about her cows and what it took to save one from a piece of metal that hit its leg in a flood. And it was just like crazy shit. So she's incredible. That was fun going and getting you. And then we had like a really fun road trip on the way back. And we stopped in Lano, Texas, and took a picture in front of this Tataria-ass building.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And so we're looking at like old world stuff in the deep-ass heart of Texas in the hill country together on this badass cool little road trip. It was a fun adventure, and you're staying with us for a couple of days. And we're having a blast with you. Mary's in love with you. She's been reading your chart, and y'all talking about all sorts of astrology, and we've just been having a great time. So we absolutely wanted to hop on here and get a little conversation going while she was in town. And so we figured let's invite some friends and make it a party. Now, most recently on Polymath, Jenny, you joined us for an insider hangout, and that was banger. It's more of the family tree of reality. People are talking about it, losing their shit over this stuff. Some people get it, and they absolutely are, and they get it because they see something there that they respond to and resonates with them, but they are very curious about learning more. Or you see people who it's just like, holy shit. And it's an amazing bifurcation going on, but it's challenging us all in either way, and we're delighted by it. We were talking about that shit when we were pointing the buildings out yesterday, your large trees and stuff. I'm like, that mountain over there, it's probably a damn tree. And so, anyway, Polymath, Jenny, if you don't mind, you'll be linked down below, as well as the other episodes you've been on. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. The month is wrapped up so nicely. I feel like I'm in my my regular speed of time now, not so warped. Glad everyone's receiving everything from those very well. I didn't want to choose the best examples in the videos so that when people go looking, they have their aha moment privately. They find this and that encourages them to keep looking. But yeah, when I'm surprised by people who are kind of shying away from it, because everything I used, especially in the insider video, that was a little bit more opinion, but everything else was based off of fact, recognized scientific, reproducible stuff. The images are there. It's not like I'm just drawing this stuff and telling you this might exist. It's there.
The common sense stuff that's right in front of your face is the harder things to articulate in this realm. And that's what's fascinating about it. And they'll come there. That's why we wish them consciousness. They're still rolling around on training wheels. And eventually they'll shed those things because they see it slows them down. But
I had my own training wheels. As I'm sitting there looking at the information, I still had like the simultaneous track of like, this is really out there. I can't believe this exists in the world. They didn't scrub this. It's kind of obvious. Like I had to grapple with it for sure.
Well, it's amazing. Thank you for joining us. Christian Yordanov is also hanging out from Portugal there. Christian, how are you, buddy?
I'm great, bro.
Cool. Anything new and exciting going on in your life except for your amazing book, How to Actually Live Longer by Christian Yordanov, which will be linked down below. God, it's getting washed out. There we go.
Yeah. I'm actually getting the hardcover ready. So that will be out. I'll be sending it out to folks probably next week sometime. And yeah, I just signed up to this health coaching accelerator program. They're like specialists in the health space, helping practitioners, functional medicine docs and stuff like that really make a bigger impact. So I've been working with these guys about 3 weeks now, busting my ass, doing the things they're telling me to do, and I'm super excited, to take my health stuff to the next level, helping loads of people, and been running a lot of deep lab work on some clients now that have invested a few thousand into lab work. So just really like a kid in a candy store with all the research and biomarkers and all this cool stuff. So really in a good spot. My wife and my daughter are away for 5 weeks total. So basically all day long, I take my dog for a walk. I'm at the computer. I take my dog for a walk again in the evening at the computer. Just like, it's not the healthiest thing in the world, but I'm just leveraging the time when I have it.
It's amazing. You should do what you can with what you got, which is sort of what Donna and I have been talking about. And that's probably definitely going to lead us into our topic, man, is sort of this admission or acknowledgement of that there's a sphere of reality around you, and it's got ways of dealing with and coping with and seeing its reality and seeing what's best for you in its reality. But how do you navigate this place? Because it's been absolutely bad shit crazy. No matter who you are, no matter what kind of sun sign you've got, no matter what your archangels are telling you, it's been fucking wild. And I don't know what's going on with it stepping up into a new level or what this is. It feels like gravity has sort of turned off, and it's in this float period where there's this lack of momentum, traction. I just feel this from a lot of folks. It's a lot of people have been talking about this. So we had an amazing conversation. That 4-hour trip just flew by, dude. We blinked and we were home, and it was just crazy. But we've been really going down the deep rabbit holes here as she's been meeting donkeys and walking around in the labyrinth and the property and stuff like that. So I suppose, Christian, I mean, you nailed it, and that brings us right into sort of what we wanted to talk about. I do want to mention, though, everybody, if y'all want to join us for what we talked about earlier, the Hangouts, the Insider Hangouts and stuff like that, check the link down below. You guys can check the correct tier level. The first one gets you access to all of this stuff. You can see the Hangouts after they happen. If you want to join us for that and take it to the next level, come do so. That would be an awesome way to support your favorite show here. And another way, we have the, I think, Patricio still has a few of those. He was on for Forgotten Youth. I'm going to link it down below, but a few of the Forgotten Youth Expanding Reality shirts as well. So check that out, ForgottenYouthSupply.com. So I wanted to plug those things, and thank you all for hanging out here and just sort of see, Christian, from a health perspective, it's interesting because I find myself, and I think it's interesting that I see people choosing this rather. I don't really grapple with this, but I see a lot of people choosing mental health or physical health. And do they need to be two totally separate things? Because an example would be if you feel good mentally about eating an ice cream cone when you feel like shit, and that makes you feel better mentally, but physically it's not really all the best or whatever. Do you think that that is a balanced trade-off, and what does that sort of look like to navigate?
I think some people tell themselves that story just to kind of cope with their bad habits, but definitely agree that it is a thing. That's what, like with my wife, we've been, because I'm a little bit militant about toxins and stuff, knowing what I know. So trying to not expose our daughter, who's not even 3. I'm trying to not expose her to crappy food, and everything is wild caught and grass fed. And now I'm seeing pictures like she's eating cakes and weird like gross shit. My mother-in-law is getting her, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna bite my tongue, and then my wife will be like, it's, if you're gonna make a big thing out of this, let's say crappy food, instead of making a big thing out of it, let's just have it, because the stress created out of the situation is probably worse than the impact it will have on you. So I think that exists, but also there is the thing where, let's say you're 40 or under in terms of age, you have still a lot of adaptive reserve in the body. Most people should have, a lot of adaptive reserve. So you can take a lot of hits without feeling it, without visible impact. But every little thing, every stressor actually does have an effect at a cellular level, at a deeper level. So for many people, the threshold of developing symptoms is when the body no longer has the adaptive reserve to maintain homeostasis, so symptoms don't start arising. So when you have symptoms, let's say a skin rash or overt fatigue, or whatever symptom you can think of, joint pain, that you've crossed the threshold where the body can continue to maintain homeostasis. So I think a lot of people are just kind of trending down that direction because of, you know, the decisions they make on a daily basis, because of the, you know, the schooling, the education, and how we've been taught about how you wait for a symptom and only then are you supposed to do something about. So I'm at the stage where I don't wait for, obviously you guys, I'm preaching to the choir here, but we don't wait for the symptom to arise. We take proactive action to, you know, support the underlying systems where that symptom should not arise until very late in life. You know, we're talking in your 90s. You should only, I really believe you should only start to creak, as it were, in your 80s and 90s, you know? So that's kind of the way I see it. I think most people don't do enough on a daily basis to support these systems. That's, you know, detox system, the gut, the, you know, reducing inflammation, keeping things low inflammation, et cetera, covering all the nutritional basis for minerals, vitamins, amino acids, and so on. Most people don't do that enough. They don't take stress reduction and stress avoidance strongly enough to be able to then say, I can take that hit. You know, like right now, touch wood, I don't have to, I can take a lot of stress, right? But most people actually are not in a state where they say, I can take this hit kind of indiscriminately. So that's kind of my view on it.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And then it's interesting to think that, well, maybe because what that obviously would be, the ice cream cone example would be just a coping mechanism, right? And so then you sort of choose your coping mechanisms. And if it used to be a whole fifth of Jack and now it's just an ice cream every now and then maybe, you know, we'd call that progress, right? It's all relative as well. And I get that.
And, you know, just to quickly add, a lot of people that eat, let's say, chocolate or ice cream when they're stressed as a coping mechanism, I actually don't think that's necessarily a bad thing to eat something sweet when you're stressed, because we know very well when you eat like a carbohydrate snack, let's say whatever, chocolate with sugar in it or whatever, the rise in insulin and cortisol are oppositional to each other, metabolically speaking. So when you get that bump in insulin, cortisol naturally goes down. It's like when you wake up in the morning, if you just start running around running errands, your cortisol gradually increases to make up for the glucose deficit because you haven't eaten anything yet. So when you have your first, you know, meal, whatever, snack, juice, and that bump in insulin rises, or that insulin spike goes up, your cortisol naturally goes down. So I think gravitating towards these things is actually a coping mechanism that is probably beneficial for most people, as long as that snack isn't, you know, Ben and Jerry's. Better like if it's like honey and, you know, whatever, like fruit or something a bit healthier.
I think you just broke down the science of being hangry.
Yeah, that's basically
incredible.
That's basically it. Cortisol goes up, you feel like crap, you're irritable, you're snappy, you get anxiety. The longer that goes, the more other stress hormones goes up, because they rise like the tide. Estrogen, we're like a woman being kind of premenopausal, that sort of relative estrogen excess will also bring up cortisol, right? So when you actually do something to balance the estrogen progesterone ratio and the relative estrogen excess is reduced, cortisol naturally goes down. So a lot of my clients, a lot of them stop, you know, telling me about the PMS because that becomes a thing of the past once we balance the hormones.
Damn.
So I have a question about
Please,
a lot of the people that have their high cortisol and stuff, they're having autoimmune issues, hormones are kind of in flux, they're having to deal with inflammation issues, and then they have to watch their diet because of that. They could be diabetic, they could be pre-surgical. So how would you confront dealing with the insulin cortisol balance when someone has something like that, with the inflammation also contributing?
I mean, so cortisol itself is an endogenous anti-inflammatory, because when cortisol spikes, so there's two major roles to cortisol. The first one is to maintain your blood sugar, or to raise your blood sugar. Let's say there's fight or flee sort of situation, so that's an emergency. So in both of those instances, your tissues, like your muscle, bone, joints, even parts of your organs, they're less important than your immediate survival. So cortisol is very efficient in breaking down your body. It literally liquefies it so it can be turned into glucose. The other I suppose the second major role it has is it suppresses the immune system, because the immune system is very nutrient and energy hungry. So when you are in an emergency thing, you got to run or fight or whatever, you don't need your immune system, or rather you want to suppress that so that energy can be diverted there. So there's other problems, because the blood, when the stress response increases, the blood is shunted towards the limbs again to fight or run or whatever. The gut is relatively sort of robbed of blood flow, which can cause things like, your food being undigested, increased intestinal permeability and stuff like that, right? So that can actually, because you're activating the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight nervous system, whereas the gut, that's part of sort of the parasympathetic rest and digest type of system. So there's a lot of issues there. I would say probably if someone is dealing with autoimmunity, you want to ensure that they're getting nutrition that is not adding to the inflammatory cascade that's dysregulating the immune system. And that generally is very mostly animal products. So like meat, that will be very low inflammatory for most people, unless they're very far down that autoimmune cascade. And then it will be carbohydrates that would be very quick and easy to digest. So things like honey, maple syrup, something that gets absorbed in the first part of the small intestine, so it doesn't have a chance to go down the rest of the gut and potentially get fermented by bacteria, cause them to overgrow and exude like various toxins and stuff like that, or inflame the gut like gluten and so on. So that's what I would do as a first thing.
That kind of sounds like our diet is equally to blame as the pace of our environment then these days.
Exactly. And the worst thing, it's like I've had clients where I tell them, look, 3-4 sessions into it, a few months into it, I said, look, if you don't get this stress under control, this is you're gonna continue just to take 1 step forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, this kind of pattern. And then, for example, I had one client, she switched from a stressful service-based job to like a desk job, and now she got married, she's pregnant, and a lot of things just fell into place some months later.
Maybe that's the whole damn thing.
It's funny, actually, your original question is something that Mary and I were talking about just before we started this, of how we approach something that we're about to eat and our whole energy. So for example, if you've got something that is really like a treat, for example, or something, like a piece of chocolate is not necessarily a normal part of the diet. And you say, I know this is bad for me, but I'm going to eat it anyway. You're putting that energy of this is bad for me into your body. So it's also your approach to the food. Now, I suggest that if the diet is pretty clean, kind of 80% or something like that, then these treats, if you like, or something like an ice cream chocolate or a cake, whatever, they're not going to cause too much of an imbalance. But if the rest of your diet is like, the typical American diet, then that isn't going to, that's going to add to the problem. It's not going to be something that your body can just sort of process easily. Because, if you kind of, this is really nice and, I'm going to enjoy this is wonderful. But you only have it kind of as a treat just occasionally, and you're just putting this pleasure, there's real pleasure and you enjoy, then I think your body is less likely to respond, because, your body does respond to your thoughts. And again, that ties into the stress. I've got slightly different ways of approaching the term autoimmune, because I just don't accept that that is that's a genuine title, or that's an appropriate title, really, because the body never attacks itself. The body is not stupid. I know that that's what they're called. That's their kind of, general kind of category. It's like all these, and they're trying to shove more and more into that category because they want us to feel that our bodies are so stupid that it will attack itself. It's more that whatever is going on in the environment is causing the body to be under stress. It's not healthy, or things are out of balance. And again, as we were talking about when we had our conversation, Christian, that you know, it's way out of homeostasis, and so it's much harder to get back to homeostasis. So you need to be more careful with what you do, what you eat, and also how you approach the food that you're eating. So again, even somebody who's on a clean diet, it's like doing it because they're denying themselves things. You're also putting a kind of restrictive energy. So you're not necessarily enjoying what you're eating, because you're feeling you're supposed to. So again, this is the energy of, you know, food is essential for us to function. Although some people would say, okay, maybe not, because there are breatharians. So maybe it's just, you know, but it's something to be enjoyed, not to be just, you know, rushed at. So like grab a sandwich because you're rushing around. You know, so
it's the way Christian called it, like turning off. You're turning off your autoimmune system. So whether there's only two switches, it's automatically running, or you've turned it off. It's nothing about it attacking yourself. If we refrained our mind to think of it in that terms of whether or not we've put the switch up or down, that's just like thinking of in different terms of eating your food. Like when I'm eating food, I shouldn't be. I'm gonna have 3 pieces of this. I'm gonna feel like a king, and then that changes my mentality when I eat that. But if people are doing that, thinking of turning the switch on and off, it might change their mentality to remember, oh, I didn't turn the switch back on. I've been in off mode. I put it back on automatic for a while.
I like the way Dawn reframes the whole conversation. Maybe we shouldn't be calling it autoimmune, just adopting that medical term, but we could say dysregulated, just to kind of keep it within the thing. What at least from my kind of my research, what I've noticed is certain things can cause inflammation, which I suppose is an immune response, right? So let's say you eat something that causes inflammation. Well, the inflammation is proper, I suppose it's immune cells that are secreting these immune messengers and various things. So in terms of the nocebo effect and the food you eat, I feel like I'm in such a good place personally, where the foods that I think are the best foods for me and that I enjoy the most seem to also be the least inflammatory foods. And it very simply put, those are basically foods that are not seeds, because it seems like a lot of seeds contain a lot of various plant compounds that don't seem to agree with many humans, like lectins, you know, like gluten. Then you have your oxalates that bind minerals and they can cause various things. You have phytic acid that also binds minerals. And there's a few other things, you know, like tannins, phytoestrogens that obviously are endocrine disrupting or hormonal disruptors. So I think if I were to like really simplify it to, let's say, to like, so a 5-year-old could understand it. If anything is a seed, I would probably keep that as like a survival food. Like if you're in a real end stage situation and there's nothing else to eat, you probably can, you know, eat whatever, sunflower seeds or whatever. But if you're living in the modern world and you have, you know, the trucks delivering food, if you have the privilege to afford higher quality food, higher on the spectrum, I think if we just do that, just avoid the seeds, the nuts, beans, grains, legumes, peanut butter, anything that was a seed at one point in its life cycle, I think a lot of health problems will go away for some people. And I'll tell you, for some of my clients, I had one lady, she had 35 years of this herpes type rash would appear on her, you know, on her buttocks and various other places. And it took me several months to finally get her to give no seed, no grains, no breads a trial. And then that was the end of our, you know, the 6-month package she had purchased. And then I pinged her like 2-3 months later and I was like, how you been, et cetera, et cetera. She's like, and she just responded, getting rid of the nuts, seeds, beans, and grains has completely transformed me. No, the herpes rash completely went away. Like this thing, she told me no doctor ever helped her get any relief, any idea what it is. And it just went away by removing. So, herpes, you think like herpes viruses are not done. I know you're shaking your head like, I want to punch somebody if you hear that, So I was the same, like herpes, please. If this thing just randomly appears when you eat certain foods, that's herpes. You think the food you're eating is pissing off the herpes. So it's like, I'm going to have an outbreak. Of course, it's not herpes. And then later, I found out that there's such a condition classified as dermatitis herpetiformis. And if you go to Wikipedia right now and you type in gluten-related disorders, it is actually a gluten-related disorder. So just think about just gluten. We have like a dozen or more conditions that are just gluten-related, from ataxia, where you lose control of your limbs and so on, to a number of other skin, autoimmune, inflammatory, and allergic type conditions. So that's just from one plant compound in a seed, So there's a lot of power. I think if the population removed these things, like the seeds, the grains, the nuts, the beans, everything else, the lentils, they're in the health of like the majority of people will improve drastically.
Have you read any books by Robert Sapolsky?
Not full ones, but I have been exposed to his work a bit.
Just for anyone who can't change their diet from seeds, beans, and stuff like that. So remove the lectins from beans. You have to cook it in a pressure cooker, and it changes it molecularly, and it wouldn't cause you gas. And then seeds, it's about removing the top coat of the seeds. I think that's where all the toxins usually are. They're causing the inflammatory gut issues. Dawn, sorry.
No, that's fine. I am moving more into the idea that we are different. Some of us are different, and nuts, seeds, and legumes, I am fine eating. I don't eat meat. That's a particular choice, and I'm fine without it. I'm looking at ways of continuing to improve my diet. I've heard and read about the ideas of oxalates and lectins, and there's conflicting research, and I think in any of these topics there's all sorts of ideas. So I'm more open to the idea that certain things that affect some people in a way that negatively affects their health, that it's detrimental to their health, other people are absolutely fine eating those things. So I don't think there's a one size fits all. And again, I'm not, disputing what you're saying. And obviously the people you're helping, they are genuinely being helped. And that's great. And that's why some people thrive on certain diets and some people don't. So, I've heard people who are meat eaters that went vegan, and vegan went meat eaters.
Yeah.
There's, and I think not just we're different, but we can be different in different times of our lives. So I'm just where I am at the moment. Being vegetarian suits me, and I'm open to other ideas. I just know how I feel, and again, you can tell for yourself whether something upsets you. You'll if you feel it in your digestive system, and it's not functioning well, then there's definitely something in your diet that I would suggest people need to actually just think about.
I agree, because
I have a problem with.
Just to quickly say, and I talk about this in my book, How to Actually Live Longer. The fact is that we've had grains, as if history is indeed correct, which God knows even at this point, but we've had grains as part of our diet for some 12,000 years. Now some more of the more carnivore guys will say, yeah, but we shrunk, we used to be much bigger. But the fact is we did not have chronic disease in spite of all these grains. Like, people used to eat mainly just wheat, bread, and that's how they would subsist. And it's only in the last 100 years or so that all these diseases are really ravaging our society. Similarly with sugar, we've had sugar for hundreds and hundreds of years, and people were not as sick or anywhere as sick as they were, let's say in the 17th century. In fact, you can correlate the advances in civilization with the increased, grain consumption, and then the Industrial Revolution with the increased sugar consumption. So there's many ways to kind of attack the issue, but you could say, nowadays wheat is not only more hybridized, but then there's all these extra the glyphosates and the pesticides. So there's a million things, and then because of such a sterile and full of antibiotics environment, it could be that our gut bacteria, for example, there's bacteria called oxalobacter that help to metabolize oxalates, and very few people apparently nowadays have those bacteria. So I definitely agree, Dawn, that 10,000 years ago, people could subsist probably only on food or on grains and beans and seeds. And for some reason today, we're just either not as resilient in terms of how degenerated the food supplies, the environment is. And it could be many other things. It could be the actual foods themselves, just not being as nourishing as back in the day. We know a lot of these minerals from the soil are either depleted from over farming, or things like glyphosate, they can chelate some of these things. And then other things like NPK fertilizer, they can block absorption of certain minerals at the plant root level, which could then that translates to the entire food chain. So things like, copper and manganese, and there's a zinc and so on. So, and then when we don't have these things, if someone is, for example, zinc deficient, they can't make sufficient hydrochloric acid and certain digestive enzymes, then meat would not agree with them, and then they would probably gravitate away from that meat. But that could further exacerbate a zinc deficiency. Just as in this one example, it could further exacerbate a zinc deficiency, which could have sequela down the chain. But there's I totally agree that back in the day, just people seem to be a hell of a lot more resilient. They could eat anything and still thrive.
Because of the chemicals that are being added to the food production systems, and the way monocultures just deplete the soil, that it's never returned to, it's never. NPK fertilizers are only part of the way that the soil is then sort of made healthy again, and that's what the regenerative agriculture methods are all about, which is why it's so interesting to spend that time with Molly on her farm, to just get more, to learn more about it and to understand that the health of the soil, because she says, and again, it's, you can look it up, that there's something like 59% of all life forms live in the top of the soil. And that's just phenomenal. And there's very little of that. And also we were talking about the fact, like with wheat, that in the US, that there's a lot of what's called gluten intolerance. But the more I look into it, the more I am of the opinion, and again, it is my opinion, that it is things like glyphosate and NPK fertilizers and the way that the wheat has been manipulated and hybridized and GM and all those sorts of things, that it's no longer in its natural form that it would have been, 100, 200 years ago. It's been messed about with because people, again, Americans who go to places like Italy or France can eat the bread, can eat the pasta, and they don't have the issues that they would have in America. So there's definitely something that's done differently in this country than is done in some parts of Europe. And again, so I'm just still exploring all of this and how these different foods affect us. And I'm just moving away from the one size fits all, because we are different. And I'm not saying that, the American diet is a good way of eating. And it's like, it's okay to carry on as long as you believe it's okay. I don't mean that at all, because the body does need to be nourished. I'm just kind of at the point where I think people are slightly different, and the way we are, it seems to maybe have some correlation with blood types. That again is something I'm still open-minded about, because I'm not quite sure what blood types are, how that actually works. I don't think it's how the mainstream tell us. At the same time, that there are some correlations with certain blood types. I happen to have the blood type that is said to be more sort of that's happier with the sort of vegetarian diet. So maybe that's because it works for me. I don't understand the blood type part of it. However, it works for me. And so, yeah, it really is interesting. But again, it's not saying that people can, I can eat anything. or just because I like it, I can eat anything. So I'm with you that it's really important. And again, talking about it earlier, that the fact that we have to use the word real in front of food to when we're talking about food, it's like real food. Yes, things that grow out of the ground or on trees, or that live out for people who eat meat. That are natural, rather than made in chemical made in factories. That are chemical based. And so if the label sounds like a chemistry set, I'd suggest maybe it might not be the best thing for you, unless you are really, really hungry and it's a survival thing. You just, okay, well, but,
And to me,
otherwise,
it's kind of horrifying. Even when, I don't know what the label here in Europe is bio for organic products. So we were in Spain there a couple of weeks ago, and I just went into a big chain of stores, and I know they have like a few organic products. I was just looking for toothpaste, and then I was just looking at the products, like the body washes and the shampoos that are quote unquote organic. I'm like, it's disgusting. It still has like 30 freaking chemicals, and the mouthwash had polysorbate 80 and stuff like that. I'm like, how in the hell is organic? Like, does nobody even like care anymore? They're like in the office, they're like, oh, just slap a sticker bio organic on it and just throw in the market. Like, do they not have like a quality assurance guy like me? Like, guys, you fucking crazy? What is this disgusting slop here you're calling organic?
It could be the organic version of the polysorbate 8. There could be a horrible version of it, and that's just the organic version by comparison. So technically they could have the polysorbate 8, create a horrible version of it, and then test the both, and then that one falls under the category of organic by comparison.
It's only killed 50% of the rabbits.
Right.
I think it's a certain percentage is allowed for it to be organic. So it doesn't have to be 100% organic. So I think as long as it's, I don't know, whatever the number is, I'd only be speculating if I said. But
20% of the time it's organic, all of the time.
No, I think something like 90% of the ingredients need to be organic. So if that polysorbate 80 is less than 10% of the product, maybe that's why it's allowed to be organic.
Jesus Christ.
But that 10% may negate the reason for having the thing in the first place,
exactly.
Health-wise. It's so interesting. May just knock out the other 90. What were you saying, Polymath?
Do either of you, since you're not from America, want to take a guess at what the top 2 ingredients are in all baby formula?
Yes, I do. High fructose corn syrup is one, and then maybe something with soy, either soy milk, maybe soy milk.
It's usually soy solids or corn syrup solids right after the fructose corn syrup itself. Yeah,
it's pretty bad.
Yeah, so the rest of the country was arguing, like, what's wrong with formula because they use goat's milk and stuff like that. And like, America uses corn syrup solids. And they were like, what? You could hear the record skip across nations.
That's pretty sick. Like, I'm surprised more kids don't have like conditions, and it's absolutely sickening.
Well, people make fun of a certain set of our population by saying that they put Mountain Dew in their baby bottles. But technically, everybody that uses that formula puts an equivalent of Mountain Dew, minus the caffeine, I suppose, into their baby bottles. Gross.
Yeah. It's pretty
interesting. Bad. You're all doing it if you use that. That's wild. So, I mean, that's the question. How do you navigate this place? It's bizarre. And, one of the things that's really interesting is the mental component to this, because I don't think you can just say, okay, I'll work out X amount of days. I will only eat this and then I'll be happy, because that's not inherently true, because there's a balance here, And so I've talked about it before, but in The Matrix, when Mouse is eating the slop and he's like, Dozer tells Neo that it's got everything the body needs, and Mouse, I think, correctly corrects him and says it doesn't have everything the body needs, meaning that we need more than just slop that's got all the packed nutrients that this one particular archetype of a human can function on the most efficiently based on some standards. Yes, exactly.
From the Bible, Jesus saying man does not live on bread alone.
There you go. It's that exact example. And so to that, then there's a
And
balance,
that was Jesus's body.
And pretty sexist.
yes.
He should have said, "Person does not live on bread alone."
Yeah, that's right. Jesus, sexist as
Jesus.
Great quote. What was I saying, Dawn?
How about
Sorry, bro. We derailed you
with
badly.
the
there.
Body of
mind,
Christ
with
threw
the
me
med-
off.
Yes.
I started thinking of
Yeah.
a sweaty savior, and I just got lost in it, you know?
This is my body.
Yeah.
lot of
I got
guys-
comments and
That's a
questions.
whole side topic of all of that.
We'll do it in
maybe.
the afterthought. We'll bring up Body of Christ in the afterthought, okay?
He said he
We'll
would
let
sustain me.
Oh God, it's so weird. And no offense to anybody who's pumped about doing that. I think it's abnormal.
I think though, just to kind of go back to what you were talking about, Brandon, I absolutely think that positive mental. In fact, in one of my big books on natural medicine, one of the very first chapters, they discuss the history of natural medicine, naturopathic medicine, and so on. Positive mental attitude is a major part in that kind of first section, because if you look at the, I suppose, the pyramid of hierarchy in terms of what is required for optimal health, diet is actually not the first thing, although it's the one heeded most attention. Before diet is actually how you breathe on a daily basis. A lot of people, they have very dysfunctional breathing patterns because either they weren't taught how to breathe, or their stressful lifestyle is kind of having them, breathe too much and kind of take shallow breaths and so on. But beyond that, or rather, as even deeper than the breathing, is the positive mental attitude. Because if you feel like the world is out to get you and all that in and of itself, that's the stress of that can put you in a sympathetic state, in a fight or flight state, and that can then cause these dysfunctional short breathing patterns, or over breathing, or kind of expelling too much oxygen, and then that messes with your carbon dioxide levels, that messes with the pH of your blood, that actually reduces the oxygenation of your tissues, because you need a certain amount of carbon dioxide in order for oxygen to be released from hemoglobin to your cells. So when you kind of this kind of sort of fight or flight state, that feeds into a lot of these other things. So you're absolutely right. I genuinely believe that the more ascended masters around us, they are able to transmute. They could drink a cup of poison almost, and they're able to transmute that, almost like the way you like to say, alchemize that into it either being benign or even beneficial, because of there's such a strong drive in terms of positive mental attitude, and knowing that, why the hell would the creator put you here if everything wasn't always working out for you, if he didn't have your back, if the universe didn't have your back. And it's actually you that I have to thank for kind of, even for me saying these kinds of things, is because of, being around you, Brendan, that I'm actually more and more sort of this position where, last year or the year when, I forget when we met, I was definitely in a bit of a kind of a lull in terms of, where I was psychologically. So, but yeah, that's kind of all I have to say on that.
That's beautiful.
I think you said ataxia earlier about the beans and the grains and the seeds.
Gluten
And now
ataxia.
would that be mechanically altering the function of a cellular permeability process that's making the pH and carbon dioxide have that effect? It seems like the ataxia would.
I think it's more like an inflammatory cascade. I haven't looked into it a lot, but I think when there's ataxia, it's probably got to do with like maybe nervous system tissue being I suppose maybe there's collateral damage from an inflammatory cascade. That's kind of the way I would probably picture it.
Like a Chinese finger trap, just like too tight, and then like the oxygen exchange carbon dioxide ratio is not happening.
Well, we have we have these. So when you eat, generally everybody that eats, when you eat, the blood levels of a thing called endotoxin or lipopolysaccharide generally tend to rise, and these are bacterial cell wall fragments that the gram-negative bacteria in the gut contain in their cell walls. There's like at least 2-3 million, I think, per bacterial cell. So when they complete their life cycle and die, the cell ruptures, and these endotoxin particles are spilled into the gut. Let's say if the terrain is not in good order, if you have leaky gut,
detox. Yeah.
or if you're stressed, these endotoxin particles get into the bloodstream, and then they attach to TLR4 receptors. They're called toll-like receptors, and these are then the ones that cause the inflammatory cascade by the immune system, because the body perceives it's under attack, quote unquote. At least that's how the scientific literature characterizes it. And that strong inflammatory reaction is designed to, neutralize whatever is in the bloodstream. At least that's kind of the way mainstream science views it. And that inflammatory cascade there's a lot of collateral damage. It's like, let's say, touch wood, but let's say these books here across from me were to catch on fire. I take the fire extinguisher and I start extinguishing the fire, and as collateral damage, a bunch of the books get wet and damaged and potentially destroyed. So that's kind of the way I see this inflammatory cascade. It's like the way cortisol rises in an emergency. Even though you're breaking down your own precious lean tissue, it's collateral damage in the grand scheme of things, because your survival could be at stake. Similarly, there's collateral damage by this inflammatory cascade, but it could be saving your life from, whatever, quote unquote infection.
So is that where the nurse's phrase of sticky blood comes from? Is the lipid polysaccharide?
I don't think I've heard what sticky blood is, to be honest.
Okay.
Liquid polysaccharide? Is that what you said?
Lipid
polysaccharide.
It's a cool band name.
LIPIDPOLYSACCRIDE.
Who can just spell that, Dawn? Fucking the Polymath Jenny.
Yeah. From my research, I mean, inflammation is a healing response. It's only when it doesn't end when the problem is resolved, if it stays, that can become problematic. So is that what you mean by an inflammatory cascade, that it's no longer being beneficial? Because, I mean, inflammation is there, as I say, it's part of the body's healing response.
Well, I suppose it depends on how far we want to take healing, because if there's a foreign, we have things like macrophages and stuff like that we know they gobble up certain particles, be they lipopolysaccharides, be they quote unquote. Because here's the thing, like even if we assume that all bacteria are beneficial if they're as part of the microbiome, we know that even like a lactobacillus bacterium, if it ends up in the bloodstream, at that point it can be dangerous, and that's why the body then perceives it as a foreign, maybe not an attacker, but it's a foreign quote unquote object that needs to be processed. So as part of that, maybe we could call that a healing response, but it's clear that the body does. There are particles when inside the blood, when inside the body, that are deemed as shouldn't be there, and then there are, for example, in the case of toxins, for example, let's say a toxic metal, if it's sometimes they can be dealt with on the spot, but let's say they're transported to the liver through the blood, they go to the liver, they're through the detox processes, they are transformed. So you attach a molecule to the toxin, be that plastic or whatever chemical or metal toxin, and then that's phase 1, detoxification, and then phase 2 is usually to make it water soluble, so it attaches an amino acid or like a methyl group or a glucuronic acid group, and then that water soluble compound, which generally should have neutralized the toxin, is then pushed in many cases either to the urine or through the bile to eventually be excreted through the body. So it's clear that there are certain things that the body perceives should not be there and must be dealt with, right? So I think these bacterial molecules and exudates and so on, when they get into the bloodstream, the body perceives them as definitely as attackers, whether they are or not. For example, lipopolysaccharide is just a lipid and a sugar molecules stuck together. So inherently, it's not a dangerous thing. It's not like something that would touch a tissue and break it open or whatever, react with it. It's the fact that we have receptors for it that then initiate inflammatory cascades. It's clear that the body perceives this as a quote unquote dangerous thing that must be dealt with, and that may be a healing response in the grand scheme of things, but initially it's an inflammatory response, which probably is to deal with those bacterial toxins.
You talk about the acids. Sorry. Ask your question.
Oh, I was just going to say, have you heard of the term pleomorphism?
Yes, I'm not super read up on it.
It's that the bacterial forms are not fixed. They morph into different forms according to wherever they are, and the blood is not sterile. I mean, bacteria in the blood does not mean that the bacteria have infected the blood. It's not a problem. I mean, I have yet to find research that actually proves that bacteria are harmful in any way. They just perform different functions in different forms, in different organs and different parts. So that's why what are called TB bacteria, I mean, that's their name. They don't cause TB, but that's why that form is found in the lungs, because that's the form that functions within the lungs. Mm-hmm. So you'll see different forms in different parts of the body, but they are all part of a cycle that starts with these fundamental living entities that are given different names, like microzymas by Béchamp, like bionts and symbionts. I think there are a couple of other names, but these are the fundamental living particles that remain even when bodies decompose, when they're dead and decompose. There are some living particles, and they will morph into different forms depending on what is required within the body. And that actually includes certain fungal forms as well. So it's not just bacteria, and then they move into fungal. And then when the situation is resolved, they then actually return, through the other forms, and then go back to these fundamental living particles. And I mean, it's super fascinating. And again, I'm still in this kind of early learning stages of how that all works and how the body actually works. So I truly believe that the body is amazing, and there's still a lot we don't know. It's just finding bacteria has always been given this this idea, the interpretation is that, if you find bacteria, that means they caused X, Y, Z. And there's absolutely no evidence that they're the causative agents. But of course, it does deflect attention away from what may be the actual causes, which would be, things like toxins and, things that we're ingesting and inhaling and absorbing through our skins and everything that are not beneficial for the body, shall we say, to put it mildly. So again, it's, the bacteria there to break these things down. So, it's just because what you were saying about, these certain bacteria being in the blood, I'm not convinced yet that actually is problematic as such. But they're there for a purpose. There is a purpose for them.
Yeah, I suppose I'd love to kind of dig into that further. I'm not really deep into that. I don't even know where to look, to be honest.
I can share something with you.
Yeah, please do, because plenty of the stuff I'm sharing is from like PubMed, right? So we know that a lot of that can be purposely or just fundamentally wrong, or misleading on purpose, or just by mistake. But I think, to me personally, just when you look at how many different types, so we have beyond bacteria, we have protozoa and archaea and fungi like candida and yeasts. We have worms, nematodes, various. So to me, we know there's hundreds. So viruses aside, obviously that's a cartoonish. But there's definitely a lot of different bacteria or microorganisms, right, that we can detect not just in the gut, but in soils and stuff like that. To me personally, when I go out, like in the forest, I'm I certainly do not believe that all the organisms there, be they micro or macroorganisms that wish to interact with me, are put there for my benefits. Now, maybe in the body there are those kind of pleomorphic bacteria that are designed to help, us to decompose when we die and so on. But I think, like, if you look at a mosquito biting you, or like if a lion kills, or a bear comes and mauls you and eats you, I think there is within nature, there is this kind of beautiful theater of war going on. There's a lot of things like, a mosquito. I don't think a mosquito biting me is for my benefit in any way, shape, or form. There's certain things I believe that certain worms and parasites that could be there, that could be relatively benign, but I genuinely believe of these protozoa and these amoebas like entamoeba, histolytica, and stuff like that. I think there's plenty of them that are not going to be beneficial. And the question is it because the person's immune system was dropped? Is it because the terrain is not in good shape that they took hold and that they're causing issues? But that, to me, that's a little bit, it makes the whole thing very slippery, because at what point can we say, from here to here, the terrain, is in control, and then from here, the terrain is, not in optimal shape. And then that's where the organism starts to kind of cause issues for the thing. Just as a random one, I saw, I think it was a study I saw where actually Candida can, like, I don't know, consume or like take or uptake toxic metals. So I'm absolutely, and I know that certain parasites, they can like bind up toxic metals and iron, and we're so iron overloaded, especially in the West. So I know that it's possible that some of these organisms, the body maybe lets them in, the immune system allows them through, because there's a symbiotic relationship. But personally, I am still at the opinion that there's plenty of them that can be overtly harmful to the organism. And again, where that line is, where we are so weak that they take hold, I don't know where that line is really. That's kind of how I still see it. Maybe it's just a very infantile perception still.
I think what Don said about the bacteria, like it's, if we didn't provide it the environment, it wouldn't have changed to do that. Just the way genes can be expressed at certain times. A tadpole's not going to become a frog unless the environment is present. Same with a butterfly transforming from a caterpillar. There's certain times when it's appropriate to be of a different type. If we want to bring it back to spirituality, I think that's the process of ascension too. It's the actual person going through their metamorphosis, kind of. But I wanted to ask also, before that even gets to that point, like, why would we need the bacteria to break things down? That would be because our body got to a state that's required, and nature is trying to keep us alive when we're too dumb to do it. Or if it's because we're not, you mentioned all the acids that were produced. How would a body neutralize that? Would it be with salts? Because that's where the nutrient deficiency would come in, because the body uses its minerals to make different types of salts to help complete certain processes. So if we're not mineralizing the soil, because plants don't produce minerals, they absorb minerals. They're not going to grow vitamin A. You got to have that stuff kind of in the dirt, so as the Legos to assemble it. Then if we don't have a natural neutralization process of the acids, and we have acid buildup, then we would need the certain bacteria, thank God, to activate from tadpole to frog to start helping us in some of these situations, right?
I think potentially, well, I've been digging into copper more and more over the last couple of months, and it seems like copper, glyphosate and NPK fertilizers are really something that inhibits the uptake by the plant roots. And apparently in the 1920s, the average in the US, the average person's diet contains something like 4 to 6 milligrams of copper, and today the RDA is something like less than a milligram. It's like 0.9 milligrams for an adult. And from what I understand, in organic farming, they use copper sulfate as an antifungal. Now, and so they just kind of spray, like I think a few pounds per acre or whatever of copper sulfate. Some farmers, spray the soil to help to help kind of remineralize it. So if that is the case, and our diets are a hell of a lot more deficient in general because the soils are more deficient and these things are chelating and blocking copper absorption, that could be one way our terrain is just makes it more suitable for yeast overgrowth like candida and stuff like that, and potentially other fungal species. And maybe because copper is also involved in the immune system, maybe because a lot of people are zinc deficient nowadays, maybe our immune systems are, again, the terrain, the human's immune system is not, up to par, quote unquote. Maybe that's another reason why more people seem to, I don't even know if it's more than before, but generally more
it's
people
electrons.
suffer from. So again,
If
I'm like,
everything
I'm
was
trying to-
ionized, it would attract the electrons. You're creating an attraction to it. All the minerals would literally go to the plant root itself. Plant root's looking for that charge in the soil for the minerals to attract to it. So if you're ionizing your soil, instead all the electrons, they can go to the ground or they can go up to the atmosphere. But we have all of our satellites and radio signals bouncing off the atmosphere, so all the ions are going in a different direction. So you need to actually ground into and electroculture, electrify your plant bed, or do something locally to your soil.
Yeah, that's why electroculture with the copper pipes and rods and antennas.
Yes,
maybe,
electrons.
God damn.
It's like grounding
who
for
knows?
you. It gets you really in contact.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's such a synchronous
Nailed it.
synchronous thing that, and I
Really,
don't know.
we need salts. We need to be like salt water, but if you can't go around salting the earth, so you have to give the earth the Legos that a human body needs to produce the salt.
And, over the last couple of weeks, I've probably taken, I suppose, maybe a couple of grams of copper, like topically ingested, which is something like maybe between 10 and 20,000 milligrams. And it's less than 1 milligram is the RDA. And they're telling you, it's so toxic. And, apparently people that try to commit suicide with like 20 grams of copper, they're not even successful all the time. Like more often they're not, they're unsuccessful. And it goes back to the Ayurveda, the copper vessels having this bacteriostatic effect. I don't know. All I know is I feel good. I feel better. And from what I understand, copper is actually used in the energy production cycle. So I think in the last complex of the mitochondria, there's copper and iron. And because we have such a relative excess of iron, there's some kind of imbalances there. And that basically, it's like the whole chain. There's like a break in the chain where the energy is supposed to be produced. So remineralizing yourself with copper, I think would be probably prudent for most humans nowadays, because there you go. Just thinking about what are the best,
a little flex back there.
what are the best sources of copper? It's liver and oysters, and these are not foods that most people consume regularly. So,
well, imagine the type of traffic jam you would always have on your freeway if nobody ever changed the fuel filter on their car. So everyone's just having hiccups, and just everyone's just a little tripped up. And that's how, like, body wide, just these small deficiencies create a whole traffic jam. Basically.
Before you know it, hangry.
Hangry.
Let's do the talk about the salts, if you don't mind, because we talked about this on the episode that you joined me on, Dawn, and we were just discussing this with Mary. She's probably out there on a tangent about it now and how it relates to astrology, because that's another data point I think that needs to be added here. Yes, I haven't said it all episode, but I'm doing it now. Astrology is very important to this. It's part of the subjectivity of this. It's part of why I so strongly agree with all of what you're saying, but Dawn, especially when you say we're all different. Yes, and astrology alone will tell you that. So, of course, Virgos especially, picky eaters have stomach issues. That's just a thing Virgos have. Now, maybe a diet would help with that, but not a ubiquitous diet, right? Because it's also astrologically specific to Virgos. So that may be another data point you consider. Sort of look into some health tie-ins with astrology. I think that would be a dope thing to ask your clients too. They'd be like, "What? You consider that shit?" And you're like, "Bro, we look at it all." So we were though talking about the 12 salts, and please explain this better than I can. The 12 salts and how it relates to you, and how when you were born, you're actually deprived of a certain number of them, and so you should be supplementing them. But it is based on when you were born, so technically your astrology. Please.
It is, yes. There are 27 salts in total, but there are what are called 12 primary. I am still at the very, very early stages of learning about this. So again, I can't go into like deep knowledge. But there is a tissue salt that relates to each of the 12 signs. So that, again, the 12 primary salts are related. Each one is related. So as I'm a Pisces, mine is ferrum phosphate, which is really interesting when you're saying about the iron overload, whereas it would appear that I'm actually deficient in iron. But it's not iron as such. It's an iron. It's a type of iron. It's an iron salt. So it's a salt. And again, because of the way agriculture has gone over the past, as you say, like 100, 200 years, that we've got real deficiencies. Oh, yes, that's what. Yes, one of the books. The other one is. It'll come to me. George Washington Carey is the author. I mean, he's written a few. The Zodiac and the Salts of Salvation. I think that's the title. Zodiac and the Salts of Salvation. And he goes into a lot of detail about how we are affected by salt deficiencies in these salts, because that's how, the way the agricultural system, food production, has made it deficient, has made the soil deficient. It is fascinating that it's different for each astrological sign. And also there's within that chart, and again, I could share that with you so you can put it in the show notes, where we know sort of Aries starts at the head and then goes all the way through down to Pisces of the feet. And there's within that chart that there's a figure of a person so within the circle of the actual different zodiac signs. So the head is beside Aries and then goes around with the feet ending up at Pisces. So you can see which part of the body that the sign is kind of related to, influences. So the more of the influence, again, the cell salt that would be deficient. I mean, these are not actual supplements. These are really kind of almost like sort of food sources that you're giving your body, the tissue salts that it needs to actually function optimally.
What are some examples of the specific salts? Would it be like any specific ones that you can
There's
think
a
of?
chart. There's a whole chart. I'll send it to you for sure, but offhand, just a couple.
Yes, I mean, there's one, I think it's, and they've got slightly different names, magnesium. Magnesium.
There you go. Polymath pulled up a book. If you don't mind, for the audio-only audience, Polymath, what's the name of that book?
Facial diagnosis of cell salt deficiencies. And they get up close, they look at age spots in your skin, the way your pores are, the oiliness of your pores is because of A type A of salt. All these different spots have words on them, if you can see.
This is fascinating. There's a whole medical astrology thing to this. And that would be a fascinating guest to kind of have on, because these data points are, what I love about this is that they're being considered. I think this all started with the UFO phenomena. So we have aliens to thank for this, or whatever that is. Because we started relating that a lot of the things in the freaky woo-woo are pretty connected. And we started saying, oh, well, it's all one thing connected, right? Or we started saying that. And now you can look at this and say that maybe some of these disciplines, what it offered us the ability to do was to swallow our judgment about different ideas. And it allows us to take in new information and consider them as an amplification to what we already have going on, rather than a competition, and that it's trying to compete with this. It's like, well, actually, if these data points are considered together, this may be a game changer for that.
Yeah, guys,
really.
You just have killed my next 3 months. Oh my god!
Yeah!
He's on this
gonna have
rabbit
to-
hole.
One
yeah.
of us. One of us.
One
One
of
I'm
of
gonna have
us.
to reevaluate all my
There you
goals.
go.
What do you mean reevaluate? Just fine tune them.
I'm afraid it'll probably take more than 3 months to get through this. But I mean, again, that,
Oh, yeah,
that
I know,
episode. So there's it's huge, and
It's massive.
I haven't dedicated like a huge amount of time, to really study this exclusively because obviously there's like so many other things to look at. It is fascinating, and it does, for me, confirm that this is a living realm. Whatever it is that we're in, it's a living realm, and we are very much interconnected, and it's all interconnected. And it's not like predestined. At the same time, that we are influenced according to when we're born, where we're born, the time. And again, it's just there's so many different nuances within all of that, within the chart. And there are different. There's another way of looking at at your birth chart, and it's not the point that you were born, or the day you were, or the moment that you were born. It's actually when you were conceived, and that gives a whole other aspect to who we are and the influences of who we are then going to be. I mean, I've had that reading, and it was just astounding how close it was to, or how aligned I felt to where I am now in my life. And I can't see that as it's just a coincidence. There's definitely something to it. And so this realm, I feel, is just so rich that we are really just at the beginning of trying to understand it all. And again, with the systems that are out there, sort of, especially the medical system, but all these kind of official science, I'll put it in inverted commas, systems are made to make us not trust our own observations and our own experiences, and to trust their papers and everything else. And again, that's not to say that there are some useful information that you can get out of some of these studies and papers. It's to say that it's really to emphasize that, we need to start trusting our own observations, our own experiences, ourselves, what we are experiencing, and what we are observing, and trust that. So back to trusting ourselves, taking responsibility, rather than outsourcing it to these organisations that certainly know nothing about how the human body works. But as I say, going back to the pleomorphism, I will share something from the Biggleson brothers, Adam and Josh Biggleson, who are carrying on the work of their father, Dr. Harvey Biggleson. I don't know if you've come across him, but he was he had all kinds of problems because he was looking at actually at the blood and finding all kinds of fascinating things going on in the blood.
I was first row for Adam's talk at the Acapulco this year.
Right. Okay. So yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's part of the Anarchapulco crew. There
Right.
you go. Just hooked her up with Charlie Robinson too. See how this everything overlaps so beautifully. It's insane. It's amazing.
Yes. Well, if you've seen Adam's presentation, then yeah, you'll know what I'm talking about. And that's what I was saying about the pleomorphism and also these fundamental living particles, which you can see in the blood samples that they take.
How much is one of those dark field microscopes, out of curiosity?
I don't know. Probably best to ask Adam. I would imagine they are.
Can't put it on a credit card, no.
Well, it's getting hold of the right sort, because there are some that are very high powered, but they're not. So they're so high powered that you aren't able to really see what you're seeing. So again, they're kind of going on the technology rather than being able to understand what you're actually looking at. But again, this is way outside of my actual field of expertise. So again, talking to either Adam or Josh Biggleson would give you far more information. So if you've connected with him, or if you haven't, I mean that would be great.
You should do.
Yeah, yes, definitely. And again, it's making me open up to what's actually going on in the body and how the body works, because I think there's still so much that we just don't know, and there's loads more to learn, and it's because again, within the end of COVID, there was a short video that was made from a PDF that somebody I know met created called "What If My Body Is Brilliant?" And it asks all questions to make you actually think, well, yeah, what if it is brilliant? And it is brilliant, and it can look after itself. It's just, we tend to get in its way of helping it look after itself. And certainly diet is one of the things. So it's, the body wants to be nourished in terms of the food, as also in terms of the kind of the emotional input as well. So again, the stress. We can cope with a short amount of stress. It's like, I'm running late, quick. So you get everything done. You get to where you want to be. It's over, goes down and it just returns to homeostasis. That's fine. But it's when it's perpetuated, it's just constant. And that's what's been going on for the last 4.5 years. So that's when, and they know what they're doing because they know they keep us in stress. So we're not thinking, we're just reacting instead of just stepping back and taking our own choices, or just making choices, taking responsibility. So I think there's a lot more of that going on. But it's a bit of a strange phase at the moment because the COVID nonsense has ended, but there's still some other things that may be hiding in the background. What they're calling bird flu, which is just again more rubbish. More
Tissue
rubbish.
salts,
Silly.
Cell salts. This exact
Maybe this time
topic.
it will be real though.
Nah, it won't.
We're talking about it on the Z Talks when we're talking about the CSF, the tissue salts and like mineralizing and stuff. So the universe wants this message to get out at this time for everybody, really, because when I brought it up, my understanding of it was for to optimize my internal messaging system. Because it's like an insulator and a conductor. You need the right salinity, and then you have like a power thing. So that's how I was looking at it cellularly. Is like if your intuition can have more clarity if all of your cells are conducting appropriately. And so I got this message like, look into tissue salts. I didn't know what it was. That's how I ended up with this book. So there's so many levels that people need it. It doesn't matter if they don't want to improve their health. They need it for other reasons.
Well, the body is electrical, so yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
We need to have that in the right power to keep creating the electrical current, which sort of goes through, and then our magnetic biofield, which extends beyond us. So, we need to keep our, as Eileen McKusick calls it, keep our voltage up. And
Right.
that's what
Spiritually speaking, this is your fuel filter.
That's amazing. Yes. That's amazing. All right. Well, I'm going to link that book down below because we were talking about it. I'll do Salt's book. Okay. Well, what do you say, gang, that we give some words of encouragement to the audience here, and we'll sign off, but we're going to hop into the afterthought because I have something really interesting to ask you guys about body of Christ, as above, so below kind of stuff. So we're going to tie some things together here. I'm excited about it. And to answer the question of dark field microscope monetary investment here, we've got them everywhere from $303.99 to, I think this one was $26K. It's a scope. Pun intended.
That's cool.
Look into lab resales, like when universities get new equipment. What do they do with their old equipment?
Yeah, like
Auctions.
estate sale for a laboratory.
Yeah.
That would be cool. Do a mad scientist estate sale. That would be dope as shit. Dr. Frankenstein's estate sale. You're like, I'll take that.
Yes, I do need that 1960s dentist chair.
Oh, the light comes with it, you say. Okay. Well, guys, we're going to link everybody down below. Thank y'all so much for this amazing, cool moment here. This is such a delight. And thank you, Dawn, for being in studio. This has been amazing having you at the house. A reminder for everybody out there, if you guys are interested in joining us out here on the ranch, we're doing a Halloween hangout. It's a camp extravaganza kind of a deal. Just email me at expandingrealitypodcast@gmail.com. We're going to do 4 days, 4 nights out here. We're going to do some hikes and stuff like that and hang out on the ranch. So got a interesting list of people coming already, but it's going to be a super cool hang. So email again at expandingrealitypodcast@gmail.com if you are interested. Looking forward to seeing whoever wants to come and it's aligned there. So before we get into our afterthought here, let's run it around the room and tell everybody where they can find each other, as well as what gets you out of bed every morning. Christian Yordanov.
What?
What gets you out of bed every morning, and where can people find you?
Yeah.
Okay. ChristianYordanov.com is my website. And I guess I'm on the Instagram if you all want to follow me there. And what gets me out of bed in the morning, man, is just this kind of stuff, just learning and expanding every single day and learning new things, and just not being afraid of being a beginner and not knowing and being a dum-dum and incompetent, because I think if you can get over that fear, you can really allow yourself to expand fully. But if you're stuck in that sort of, oh, I know my thing, I'm going to stick to my thing, this is my thing, then you're fucked. That's you might as well just roll over and die, because you've stopped growing. So what gets me out of bed in the morning is the infinite sort of fountain of knowledge and wisdom that we get to drink from every day, at least while in this reality.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Polymath Jenny, what gets you out of bed every morning, keeps you moving forward?
Oh, my circus of monkeys out there, of course, all 100 of them that are shoving along this evolution wave as much as they can.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Do you want to tell people where they can find you, or I'll link it below? Don Lester, what gets you out of bed every morning, darling?
Well, it sounds like I'm copying Christian. I'm not. It's just the fact that there is still so much to learn, and I'm keen to learn more. I know sometimes I can go off a bit like a butterfly and have so many different things. Like, oh, this is interesting. It's like so many, and then I kind of like, oh no, I have to put those to the outside and focus on this. So there's still so much to learn. It's not that I'm getting rid of what I think I know, but I'm not hooked on what I think I know. And I just go, okay, well, if I find something different, I'm open to some new information. So yeah, it's just learning more, expanding more, being more connected to you wonderful people. And I'm just so delighted to be here actually in person in this studio. This is fantastic. It's wonderful. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. Where else? Oh, and I have a Substack, Dawn's Writings, that I post not regularly, but as often as I can. I've not been doing anything while I've been away and doing different things. So yeah, I've not been focusing on, but I'll be writing when I get back. So different topics, mainly kind of health connected and not always. So so that's dawnlester.substack.com.
Just want to take a moment here and thank those amazingly wonderful souls for joining me for that incredibly cool conversation. There is plenty more of this conversation to be had, so while you're down in the show description, checking the links for the guests here that we had and all the cool things that they are doing, and just how to reach out to them and say, hey guys, you did a great job, and you're doing great, here's a follow. While you're doing all of that, there is a link down there that reads Patreon. It's pretty clearly marked, and that is how you support your favorite show, as well as get access to all of the bonus content, including the Afterthought here, which is a blast. You're definitely going to want to catch this one for sure. If nothing else, sign up for this one. And then quit your membership. I don't care. Just sign up for this one. Check it out. It's a lot of fun. But guests located down below. How to do that's located down below. And thank you all for supporting and enjoying and sharing and talking about this show, because people are enjoying that. And it's really cool when somebody says, hey, this person told me about your show, and now I'm just listening to it like crazy, and my boyfriend laughs in the background when you say stuff about queefs and he doesn't know what's going on. And anyway, so thank you guys again for sharing the show and just being sweet. I really appreciate you guys. So along with all of that, go out into this crazy, beautiful, wild place that we live in. Often wild, never a bad time for a social media break, but this is probably a hella good time to take one. It's wild out there, guys. So just keep your wits about you. Keep your light shining as bright as you can through this fucking nonsense at times. Feel what you're feeling most of all. Don't judge yourself for feeling what you're feeling, secondly of all, I suppose. But most of all, go out in this beautiful place. Love yourself, guys. Pick up a piece of litter while you're at loving yourself. And while you're also loving yourself, picking up litter, get out of the left-hand lane. Be nice to everybody you come across. Maybe open a door or two. Use doors as smile cues. Just every time you walk through, one smile. See how that changes your life. But above all and anything else, out of the left-hand lane, and above all and anything else, Go out in this beautifully mysterious place and y'all just be good to one another. Thank you so much for watching, listening, subscribing, and just being sweet as fuck. We'll see you next time.